Good afternoon from New York City. My name is Bob Linden, and I'd like to welcome each of you to today's webinar, which is entitled The Agency Website, What Prospects Are Looking For. Today's webinar leader, Rob High, will provide an overview of what prospects are looking for when they visit the agency website. Rob will review what key information is required for the agency homepage and the first things prospects look for when visiting your agency website. Before we start, some housekeeping. You can hear us, but we cannot hear you. If you have any problems viewing the presentation on your computer, it could be a firewall or security issue on your end, and you may need to contact your IT person. If you need to contact me via email, please send an email to bob.linden@filamentinc.com. We'll help you if you have any technical issues. And if you disconnect for any reason, just go back to the email invitation and log in again. Our webinar leader today is Rob High. Rob's consultancy focuses on helping agencies improve new business performance. He has individually worked with over 300 Marcom firms of all disciplines and has had over 1,100 attendees to his new business development seminars, which he conducts across the country. Before starting his consultancy, Rob was Global Chief Marketing Officer for the Young and Rubicam Group, and prior to that was Chief Operating Officer of Kirschenbaum Bond and Partners. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a few minutes for questions. However, please feel free to send us your questions as we go through the webinar. You can send us your questions via the Q&A box, which should be on your computer, or you can email me your questions at bob.linden@filamentinc.com. We encourage everyone to tweet during this webinar using the hashtag FilamentWebClinics. And let me anticipate the first 5 questions. Yes, I will be sending out to all attendees a copy of Rob's presentation. And now with that, please welcome Rob High.
Thank you, Bob, and welcome everybody wherever you are across the country on a day where we're watching our 401ks disappear. Kind of depressing. The subject is the agency website and the role it plays in new business, which is a critical one. We need to start with the new business fundamentals to help you understand why I believe the website is so critical. Fundamental number 1 is the ugly fundamental, because all of your current clients will eventually fire you, every one of them. It's the only sure thing in our business that you will lose business. The question is, will you win enough to replace it? And that's why you need to recognize that you are really the only loyal client you have. And you need to put yourselves first. Agencies have a tendency to make new business something that you'll do next week or you'll do later. And the problem is that constant delay of action puts you in a vulnerable position. You need to make new business the top priority for the agency. Fundamental number 2. You must recognize that you're not in the marketing communications business. You're not in the advertising business or PR business. What you are in is the relationship business. It's a relationship that slows down or maybe even stops your current clients from talking to your competition. It's a relationship that allows you to make a mistake, to screw up, and keep the business. The analogy to the personal world is it's like a good give and take marriage. And if having a client on an ongoing basis is like a good give and take marriage, I contend that you need to think about business development as dating, just like dating in the real world, where getting to know each other so maybe you get married. That's what it's all about. Fundamental number 3, professional services are bought, not sold. Selling doesn't work. You have to wait until they're ready. The fact that agencies try selling to prospects is the reason prospects don't want to meet with agencies. They don't want to be sold to. Fundamental number 4, winning new business is all about I like you and I trust you. I like you and I trust you. It's an emotional decision. It is no different than when you hire somebody. You may have a rational screen, the resumes, but at the end of the day, you invite in 3 or 4 people, interview them, listen to them, talk to them, and you make that decision in your gut. And it's the same when clients decide to hire an agency. I like you and I trust you. The problem is agencies tend to think that it's about best idea wins, because a lot of times in a pitch they hand out a brief that they want you to address, and you fall into the trap of believing that it's the agency that has the best response to that brief will win, which isn't true. It's the best team of people. And in fact, a pitch is a job interview for that team of people. The implication of the I like you and trust you is you've got to get face to face. You're not going to achieve the relationship, via remote control, via email. You've got to get face to face. And there's only two places you're going to get face to face with a prospect. One is in a pitch, which means that it all comes down to one hour or 2 hour presentation, which is really a stupid way to select a critical strategic partner, but a hell of a lot of clients do it that way. The other is prospecting. Let's compare the two. In a pitch, you have to be invited. You cannot crash the party. To be invited, they have to know who you are. And that's a problem, because most agencies in this world have very, very, very low awareness, so they don't get invited. You can only participate in the pitches that come up. You can't make a review happen. You're going to be in competition with several other firms by definition, and it's going to cost you money, a lot of out-of-pocket money, and it's going to be very time-consuming. Let's look at the flip side of prospecting. With prospecting, you get to select the prospects you want to pursue. It's 100% your choice. You really don't have any competition except the incumbent, and if you do it cleverly, the incumbent won't even know that you're kind of moving in on that client. Oftentimes, you can win without pitching. At Y&R especially, in its Head of New Business, I did a lot of dating of prospects over a period of time. And in several cases, we simply got handed the business. They got fed up with their current agency, decided they want a new agency, didn't bother with a review, just handed us the business, which is a much nicer, simpler way to win a piece of new business. Prospecting does cost money. You need a budget for prospecting, but it tends to be less expensive than the cost of pitching. And at very least, if you're doing a good job of prospecting, it will increase the odds of you being invited to the pitch when it happens. So going forward, prospecting needs to be the agency's primary focus, and the website plays an important part of that. A disciplined new business prospecting system is essential to create a successful agency. And it looks kind of like this. It begins by selecting the prospects you're interested in, target selection. I work with a lot of agencies, and it is surprising to me how many agencies really don't have a prospect list. Or they say, well, we've talked to these companies, we were in some pitches in the past, so they're on our list. Well, that's not a target selection. You need to very meticulously, using proper criteria, put together a proper list, and it should have at least 200 prospects on it. Then you need a communications program to those people, which means you need not just the list of those companies, but you need an actual database with email addresses so you can communicate with them, which you can get through subscription services like Winmo and or other means, but you need a database in order to communicate with them. Paralleling that, there is networking, which most agencies do a little bit of, getting publicity for the agency, which is difficult to do, but there are some techniques for that that I talk about in the prospecting webinar, as well as some ways to use social media. The point of all of this outbound communication is everything flows through the agency website, everything. And from all these communications, including the website itself, you're generating awareness of the agency, which enables you to begin to make direct contact with prospects, because we know who knows who you are, because we can tell if they're reading and opening and clicking on your emails. And that allows you to then begin over time to develop a relationship, and that gives you the opportunity to either participate in a pitch or maybe get an assignment directly. The important comment I want to make before focusing entirely on the website is that building this relationship is dating. It's about going slow. It's about taking your time. The goal of prospecting is not about winning the business. The goal of prospecting is winning some relationships out there, so when the time comes for them to select a new agency, at very least, they will invite you into the review, and maybe they'll just hand you the business. So let's focus on the agency website and its role in this process, and it is critical. Your site is a prospect's first impression of you. 100% of the prospects, not 99, 100%, check out the agency website. And they do it before they contact you, before they return an email, before they, reach out and ask you anything or put you on a list or whatever. They're going to check out the website. So it's either validating you and making you impressive, or it's disqualifying you. If it's the latter, unfortunately, you'll never know, because they'll just drift away and never contact you. The problems with most agency websites, and by the way, I have visited most of your websites today, and I have comments, shall we say. The problem with most agency websites is, one, they're usually done via committee and consensus. Creative director wants this, the president wants that, the strategist wants this, and pretty soon it's kind of a melange of stuff. And the second mistake they made is they use the agency management as a target audience. You talk to each other in the conference room, and based on those interactions, you decide that's what the prospect should be interested in, which is why so many agency homepages, for starters, are kind of a mystery to the prospect when they come to it. They really don't get it. They don't get what the agency was trying to. Why? Because they were looking in the mirror at themselves and not thinking about the target audience. The only target audience for the agency website should be the 150 to 250 decision maker prospects who may visit your site as a result of your outbound communications, or simply via serendipitous inquiries. That's who it's for, those 150 to 250. It's not for the aggrandizement of the creative department. It's not, for people looking for a job. That's what the career button is for on your site. But the main site is strictly for these 150 to 250 decision maker prospects. And you need to use discipline, just like you do when you do a campaign for a client. Maintain discipline and focus on that target. You constantly need to use outsiders to evaluate the efficacy of your site. You could be anybody that you respect and you'll listen to, and have them do a critique of what it is they're taking away from that site and what confuses them. You need to realize your site is kind of like Match.com. It's kind of like the start of the dating process. This is where they're getting to know you. The first job of the site is to typecast the agency. What do I mean by that? Well, decision makers need to classify an agency before they're going to bother to learn about it. And believe me, they get a lot of communications from agencies in the course of a week. Probably many of these clients, because I've interviewed a lot of them, are getting 50 to 60 communications that it drives them crazy. The point is, there are all kinds of agencies out there, particularly these days, where digital is overlapping with social and social is overlapping with PR and so on and so forth. The classification needs to happen instantly. So the absence of proper descriptors, or the presence of traditional terms like advertising, public relations, communication, can misrepresent you or limit your agency potential. What do I mean by that? Well, look at this agency. Welcome to the transformative agency of today. This is a classic example of some people sitting in a conference room and deciding they're going to be the transformative agency, which is terminology that has absolutely no clear relevance to a prospect when they come to this homepage. Here's another one, DCG1, full house. One team working across disciplines to help you reach your goals. So you might assume that this is a integrated communications agency, but you'd be wrong because it's a direct marketing agency. Again, complete lack of clarity. Move the audience, the needle will follow. This is another set of people sitting in a conference room thinking, well, that'll be clever. They'll get that. We still don't know what kind of an agency they are. Turns out they're an ad agency, but we don't know that. So you could think it's a PR agency. Redefining modern communications. What does that mean? It probably means they're a PR agency, but it's really unclear, really unclear. You need to choose clarity versus clever when you're putting content on your homepage. You're trying to typecast yourself the way you want to be seen. Consider this famous agency, Rob High Advertising. If that is all I see, then my first impression is it's probably a kind of a 1990s agency. They just do TV and print. Can't tell if they have any media. Probably little or no interactive or social media. But if I take a carefully selected set of words, put in a certain order, I can significantly change the first impression that I give to a prospect. Advertising, interactive media, social apps. The order of words is important because since grade school, we're trained, whether we like it or not, to believe that there is significance in the order. And so given that, with these words next to Rob High, I say, well, traditional advertising is probably their main service, but they have significant interactive. Why? It's a second term. They do media planning, buying, social, branded apps. It's probably a big agency because they have a lot of services and certainly more sophisticated and more innovative. Same thing with Rob High public relations. Traditional PR, you do media relations, generate ink, product publicity. Again, probably no interactive or social media. Put a few words around near the brand name and you get a different perception. Public relations, social, digital content. This is an on and offline PR agency, adept in the social media world. They do website design and content. They're probably forward-thinking and innovative. Words mean things. I recommend to every agency that they consider using a logo lockup, which is where every time I see the agency name, somewhere nearby are a carefully selected set of descriptors that will typecast your agency the way you want to be viewed. The descriptors will change over time. I mean, who would have put social media there 5 years ago or apps 3 years ago and so on? I mean, the world is changing. And so this allows you to stay up to date and relevant. And it should appear anywhere I see the brand name, on the website, presentation, stationery, business cards, everything. Here's an example of an agency, A3 Media. We're type A. Again, these are things that get discussed in the conference room. But down below it, you see traditional media, digital media, mobile, and social. Clearly says what kind of things they do in a snapshot. PR agency, San Francisco with offices in New York and Boston as well. Their lockup is digital content communications. Now, they are actually primarily a PR or communications agency. They listed digital first on purpose, because they realize that their primary prospects are high tech and that being adept in the digital world is critical. This is a PR agency in Florida, Axia. They put public relations right underneath, but they also have a lockup, news, social, and web. that demonstrate the range of capabilities that they have. They do have a strange phrase here, though, public relations agency for regional and national companies. I'm not sure what other kind of companies there would be. I don't know. This is marketing lab. We turn shoppers into buyers. I can tell from the basic declaration this is a shopper marketing agency, and sure enough, down here we see, the specific elements of shopper marketing. So these are examples of what I recommend agencies do. I'm often asked whether or not, agencies should try and position themselves. And my answer to that is no. And why is that? Well, agencies try and do it by using words and phrases like these. We do 360 marketing. We're small and nimble. Or we have large agency talent, but in a small agency to give you attention. There's nothing wrong with any of these descriptors, but you could probably take any one of these and I could find between 50 and 100 other agencies using exactly the same terminology. I love the ones like activation and brandonomics, made up words. I've asked clients about this when I do my client satisfaction audit work. And basically, I think it's silly, just to put it bluntly. And that we have a proprietary system. Agencies describe some process that at the end of the day, all of the proprietary systems for agencies are the same. It's 3 or 4 smart people in a room. That's what the system is. So don't try and position the agency. There's simply too many agencies out there to try and make that happen. And for a prospect, they all seem to do the same thing. And you may scream, well, we do public relations better, and the other guy says the same thing. And so basically, everything cancels out everything. So don't bother. You may want to consider organizing the site based on how clients buy your services. And clients will buy by discipline. Clients typically don't buy discipline bundles. I mean, an agency that, has media and design and advertising and direct marketing, and so no client wants all those. None. They want a specific one that meets their needs. And when agencies try and line up all these services, many times it can make them appear to be too much of a jack of all trades and not a master of any one. And this is particularly true for things like PR. In most larger companies especially, the buyer of PR services is different than the buyer of, say, advertising or digital services. So they would look at a PR service in an ad agency as kind of like, well, how good could you be because you're just a PR group in an ad agency versus a specialist in PR. So that is something to consider in terms of how you present that on a homepage, which we'll talk about in a second. They buy by location. If you are an agency, and I know there are several agencies here today who have multiple locations, they will be most interested in evaluating your agency from the standpoint of the office nearest to them, which is where they logically assume they would be serviced from. So it's very important that you have information about each of the offices, not just using the headquarters to describe the agency. And lastly, by category expertise, I know there are at least 3 agencies online today with me who have specialized in certain categories, and that presents an opportunity. Because for any one of these, you may want to consider homepage force choices. For example, rather than just listing by discipline, rather than just listing the services and then a menu pulls down and one of them is PR, you might want to consider having 2 doorways into your site, one being ABC agency advertising, ABC agency public relations. That would imply you have a division that is PR, which will tend to elevate it perceptually in the eyes of the prospect visiting your site. The location thing, a lot of times the people, there you don't list any of the people in the smaller offices, and that again can make the prospect feel less comfortable with wanting to explore your agency as a choice, because as you'll find out in a few minutes, the people is a very important aspect of the site. And lastly is the category expertise. And I'll show you an example of that. This was an agency since purchased, and their business was almost entirely, and their prospect based entirely in healthcare, financial services, and consumer products. And so rather than create a one-size-fits-all so that you're trying to cover all three off in the same time, in order to navigate their site, you had to decide which rabbit hole you wanted to go down. Well, if you're a healthcare company, you're going to go down the healthcare rabbit hole. When you do, everything there's about healthcare. The client list is all healthcare. Each person's bio is written with an emphasis on their healthcare experience. The intellectual property is all healthcare related. And again, perceptually, it looks like, wow, it's a big agency, and they got four sports divisions. So perceptually, this is a great way to have a more robust presentation to the specific category that you're trying to pitch, healthcare in this case. The home page, you want to make it effective. There's a lot of strange things on a lot of home pages out there. I like to showcase agency people. I like you and I trust you starts with the agency website, and having photos or even video or something that allows me to get to know the agency people from the get-go, I find very desirable. Speaking of the people section, this is the first stop for 7 out of 10 decision makers on their first time visit to an agency site. 7 out of 10. They want to know who's running the place. They want to learn about the people. I like you and I trust you is all about the people. So I say it should be a homepage navigation option. In other words, team, management, people, whatever, as opposed to a menu pull down under some other heading. You want to think about showing the right number of people, because sometimes appearing to be larger than you are, at the outset can get you into consideration a little more frequently than if they see you as really tiny. And so doing this is about saying this is our leadership team. Now, some agencies want to show everybody from the agency. They want to be democratic with a small d. That's fine, but now you are defining the size of the agency. And if you're a big agency, that's fine. But if you're a small agency, maybe it's not so fine. So if you showcase the leadership team and say it's 6 people you put on the leadership team, but it's actually a 10-person agency, well, that agency is going to look like it's at least 20 people. And the same with a 50-person agency putting 20 people in leadership, it's going to look like 80 to 100. So it's an opportunity to do something perceptually here. When you put the leadership team, or even if you're going to do everybody in the agency, you need to provide titles. It's more important than providing names. Here is a people page from an agency I will not name, and that's all you saw when you went to the people page. They're in no particular order, and if you didn't click on them, you wouldn't know who they were. And so it's kind of like, where's Waldo, okay? This is making it harder for the prospect who's trying to get to know your agency. So this is exactly the wrong thing to do. This is the leadership team of 9 people at a 13-person agency. And perceptually, they looked a lot larger than in fact they were. The people profiles. We need to be interesting and personal. Again, it's all about I like you and trust you. This is Match.com. This is where it's getting started. I like to use multiple photos, one certainly professionally shot, but maybe candidates at home, at work, play, something that helps me get to know you. If you go on to Match.com, the person who has more photos, you're more inclined to investigate them than if somebody who only has one photo. If you use a bio format, please avoid long paragraphs and write justification, margins. It just makes it very uninviting to read. I'm a big fan not of using bio format, but rather Q&A for a couple of reasons. First of all, Q&A allows you to read it easier. It's like a constant subhead, body copy, subhead, body copy. So it's very inviting to read. The second thing about it is that it allows you to put things, comments about yourself that are serious, like what are you proudest of in your career or in your life, right next to things like what was your most embarrassing moment in your career. And you can put them right next to each other, and it's perfectly okay. And this way, they're able to learn a lot more about you than is likely to be possible in a bio format. Let your profile, whether it's Q&A or bio, be long. They're trying to get to know you. Being brief is not the solution here. Make sure you include personal stuff. You should include, how long you've been working. By the way, we don't use words like seasoned, which is code for I'm old, okay? You just talk about experience. If you've had other agency experience, don't say, she worked at a large, Midwestern PR firm. No, name the firm. It's credible. You obviously look it up if you wanted to on LinkedIn, but, include it. Also, include personal stuff like where do you like to go on vacation? What's your favorite sports or sports teams do you have, and so on. They're trying to learn about you. Also include your social media links, at least LinkedIn, so that you can hopefully get them to initiate a connection. This is an example of an agency. This is only part of it because the Q&A went on and on. As you scroll down the page, it had a combination of a bio with the Q&A with some serious things and some not so serious things. This is agency in Spokane, multiple photos, all staged, but that's okay. Again, a long Q&A that goes way beyond what you're seeing here. These are the kinds of bio pages that they're looking for, when they go on that website for the first time. I'm trying to learn about the people. This is a very long, serious bio. This is a public affairs agency in Ohio, so this is the right kind of content to have about someone, and it's consistent with the kinds of prospects they're looking at. Maximize the impact of your client list. This is the prospect's second stop. 7 out of 10 go people, then clients. 3 out of 10 go clients, then people. So it's really important. To start with, you need a client list. It's surprising how many agencies have no client list on their site. They may imply it when they're showing work, but there's no actual client list. Clients are a reflection of who you are. You don't necessarily want to show the work of every client because not every client's work is going to be worth showing, but you want them to know it's a client. You only need to include clients whose imagery will elevate the agency, not necessarily all of them. Don't list too many. 10 to 18 clients is plenty. When you start to put too many clients down there, you're basically screaming one of two things. This must be every client they've ever worked for in the past. I wonder which ones are current. Or, oh, they must just do project work. Okay, so don't put too many down there. If your 18 most impressive clients don't impress the prospects, why would numbers 19 through 30 make a difference? Logos, if you're going to use logos, you need to make them large enough to be readable. What happens here is the art director starts, trying to make it all look like very graphic, and they make a bunch of the logos too small to be read because not every logo is designed to be, 2 inches by 2 inches. Some of them have to be bigger or smaller. Also, you have clients probably all of you have clients, or at least some clients, that are relatively well known. So their imagery rubs off onto you. But you also probably have clients that are not well known. Ergo, no imagery is rubbing off onto you. So what I recommend here is that you use what I call a reveal technique, where as you pass over the logo, up pops a little blurb saying this is the largest this, the leading this. Here's an example. You can see how it pops up here. And you can also click on this and it'll take you to more information about it. But that is a technique that I recommend you use for. And here's an agency that lists a lot of clients, and maybe one or two of which I know, and the rest of them I don't. And therefore, there's no imagery rubbing off. FCB, I know a lot of their clients, but I didn't know this UTEC. I didn't know what it was, don't recognize it, so no imagery is rubbing off. But in their case, if you click on that, it goes to a very detailed description of who UTEC is and why it's an impressive client for FCB to have. So at very least, you need to do this, if not the little Passover thing. Here's another agency where they have a pop-up that as you pass over the clients. On the other hand, I want to say this is a screenshot, but it's a screenshot where the clients go by in a ribbon, and that is not the right way to try and show clients. You should have a static presentation of your clients, again, 10 to 18 at the high side. We already saw this. Okay. Showing creative work effectively. This is a section where I'm talking now to the creative director at the agency. You should attempt to organize the creative work by type versus by client. Most clients are coming to a site with a point of view, well, I'm primarily a TV advertiser, or I'm really looking for online advertising and so on. Don't make it hard for them to guess where that online advertising is, by just listing it by client. At very least, if you're doing it by client, you need to list right underneath the client name, what kind of work are you going to see here, so that I know that it's going to be digital advertising. Less is more. Quantity erodes quantity erodes the net quality impression. I had some beep in my ear. The more work you put on, the less impressive you're going to be. Because if you had 30 print ads, well, they aren't all, equally great. So the minute you start adding more and more, you don't know, then they could look at the number 30 ad first and get a bad impression of you. So I don't need to see more than 2 to 4 of the best examples in each genre in order to know you're good. Again, if your top 2 or 3 TV spots don't impress me, why would numbers 4, 5, and 6? Interactive. Do not show me little miniature screens. What you do is tell a story and then give a pop-up link. In fact, you should keep a copy of your website work on your URL. And an alternative to that is to use a kind of a slideshow where you're taking me through the key screenshots of a site so I can appreciate it. But a small little screen is not going to do anything to me. Everything you show me on the site has to be readable, including body copy. You can't show me a print ad and say you should be impressed by this, but I'm not going to let you read it. So also captions are very important to explain what is it I'm looking at. In a two-dimensional medium like the internet, I can't tell if it's outdoor, internet, brochure, whatever. So tell me the story behind the work. Here's an example of an agency showing me 3 print ads, right, life size as they appeared on their website. Can't read the body copy, useless. Here's showing me a small brochure, I guess, but I can't tell, a miniature, of the website. And how do I tell? I can't evaluate that website or that piece of literature. You've got to find more impressive ways of showing things, allowing me to go close up, allowing me to zoom in if you expect me to appreciate them. This is an example of an agency who used a laptop, and then down below on the right, you can see it had several pages where you could navigate to 4 pages on the website with a different caption explaining what the particular page was supposed to be doing. You must detail your services. It's very important in today's changing media landscape. Organize them based on how clients buy. And don't be reluctant to present new services. Maybe you've never done an app before, but you're listing apps. You'll figure out how to get it done. We proceed until apprehended. Here's an example of an agency in Portland and how they organized their services. They had a lot of specific services but basically you're either coming for some advertising or your public affairs or public relations, and maybe a digital project separately. And so you can outline the specific things you can do, but they're not coming to the agency to do copywriting. They're coming to get advertising done. That's why it's organized this way. Also, agencies feel compelled to list strategy. Strategy is gift with purchase. Nobody goes to an agency and buys 6 pounds of strategy. It goes along with other services you're buying, but they seem insistent on listing it. Here's an interesting one, Axia Public Relations. That you've seen their stuff before. That very interesting way of putting together their services, kind of organized around social, news, and web. I was very impressed by that. You make your case studies interesting. Challenge, solution, results is boring. Use a story format. Get a copywriter. Write something interesting, something that people actually want to read. And make the context clear. This is, again, agencies are so close to their cases that they write them from an insider point of view, and the outsider looking at them doesn't get it. So you need to use outsiders. Excuse me a moment. Sorry. To get feedback. Damn. Also, make sure you include the agency magic. What is it that the agency did that was unexpected, special, imaginative, that made the product or whatever the was being advertised or promoted a success? And use lots of photos wherever possible. Also, video has become very popular. A lot of agencies are now producing their cases on video, and it's very, very impactful, but the key is to keep them very, very short, under a minute if possible. Be careful about using music and sound effects on your site. Your music and my music are not necessarily shared values. Testimonials. A lot of agencies put testimonials up there. The first question I would ask is, has anyone ever seen a bad one? The best place for a testimonial, if you're going to use them, is following a case study. It acts as a kind of a coda at the end of the case study that helps verify, if you will, or imply verification of the results. Be thoughtful about emphasizing agency history. You have a right to be proud for how long you've been in business, but frankly, they don't care. They care what you're going to do for them tomorrow. So you can make it an aspect of a website, but don't make it the centerpiece. Awards, that's your thing, not theirs. Again, you can include awards somewhere on your site, but don't make it a homepage chest-beating experience. Be thoughtful about agency news. A lot of agencies have a, navigation that lists news. Nobody in the world is interested in reading press releases from agencies. Nobody. That's useless. So the only purpose of having a news section is for search engine optimization. Otherwise, I just eliminate it because it's serving no purpose. If you do keep it for SEO or otherwise, make sure you don't look out of date. You don't want the last press release to be from 2017. Please make everything on your website readable. Use a large enough font to be easily read. Let the text be enlarged. Use lots of subheads versus long copy blocks, much more inviting to read. Minimize reverse out type. Any art director will tell you that it's harder to read reverse out. And don't use gray, light blue type on white. What often happens is somebody in the agency writes the copy and it's long, and the designer gets it and says, oh, this is going to look horrible, horrible. Maybe if I try a 4-point font, maybe, oh yeah, that helped. But it's still too much. I'm going to screen it back 10%, 20%, 30%. Pretty soon it disappears. Don't let the web designer destroy the communication. There are better solutions than screening everything to invisibility. You should make a mobile-friendly version of your website because it demonstrates you understand the future power of mobile that is increasing every day. Question: what is the ideal landing page for the mobile version? In a perfect world, it would be the contact page, which is the most likely destination you're going to go to on an agency site if you're doing it on your mobile phone. Get a weekly URL report on who checked you out. It's easy to do these days with Google. It used to be more complicated. Mostly, you're going to find job seekers. But 26 pages in of the individual job seeker URLs, maybe you'll begin to see some interesting visitors, corporate URLs starting to show up. Now, you won't see the actual email address, in other words, the person, but you will see that in this example, someone from Procter & Gamble was visiting the site, and that may be a call to action on your part. Of course, if Procter & Gamble was on your outbound communications list, you probably know the person or one of the people at least who was doing that investigating. And that could mean they're starting to get interested in a review or putting out some new assignment. So it's very important to get this every week from your IT people. Make search work, especially if you sell it as a service. I can't tell you how many agencies who sell it as a service, and I work with them, and I go and I look up, public relations agency Chicago, and they're not even showing up on page 3. So, I mean, you've got to make it work if in fact you're selling search. Probably is less important if you are not. And finally, unless somebody named Info works at your agency, the point of contact on your contact page should be a real person and their email address. And they should not, you should not ask prospects to file an application to communicate. To fill in the forms, the required fields, I mean, it's an act of hostility almost like that. Make it simple. A single click on the email address link and up pops their Apple Mail or Outlook program, and they type whatever it is they want to type to you. You do get a lot of junk this way, so you may want to create a false real person's name. A second mailbox for whoever the new business person is getting these, so you can sort of manage it better that way. And with that, it's time for questions.
And we are getting a lot of questions. Rob, that was terrific. Talk about insights and takeaways. As the questions continue to roll in, let's start with the questions. What are the top keywords used in client Google searches for agencies?
Ooh,
good one.
It changes over time. Certainly the primary one would be probably I would say online content or online advertising is the more popular one right now because they're looking for that. I mean, the clients that I interview, that's the most interesting thing for them these days is content, which may be in the form of advertising or maybe in the form of putting content on their website or things like that. So that's what it is today.
One of the attendees has mentioned, I don't think prospects spend that much time on websites. Will they really read all of the bios? We decided not to include them.
Let's put it this way. If only one prospect came to your site and couldn't figure out who the people were and moved on, that was interested in the people, then you missed an opportunity. You don't need every one of them to exhaustively consume the website. You only need a handful. And so I say you should have people there.
How do you suggest I convince my leadership team to redesign the website? We really need it.
Call me. Well, at absolutely no obligation, charge, or otherwise, I'm happy to have a conversation with your management and tell them what I think about their website.
Okay, that'd be
because
great.
I have no problem with that. I mean, you don't have to hire me to do anything. I'll just throw rocks at the website, and then hopefully they'll do something about it.
We are getting some great questions that continue to come in. How do you evaluate success and ROI on agency websites? Is it direct leads, something else?
Well, okay, what's going to happen? Assuming you are doing an outbound communications program, which you need to do, and in that outbound content, and I don't have time to go into the details of what the content should be. That's another webinar. But they're going to click on that because you're going to give them a motivation to click on something on that. And where that usually takes them is to a landing page on your agency website where you have more content relating to whatever that email was about. And so you're going to know that they landed there. And when you know prospects have visited you, have read your emails, have gone to your website, they know who you are. You're no longer a stranger. And so you can actually reach out and ask to have a meeting with them. And you're going to be much more likely to get it because they know who you are and because they visited your website. So it makes a big, big difference if you really are serious about prospecting.
You mentioned having videos on your website. Any suggestions for video companies to use?
Oh, there's so many out there. Not really top of mind. If you communicate with me separately, send in my email address. I'll give you a couple. I have to look it up, though I haven't checked the list in a while.
Okay.
By the way, video is when you're using video, it's very important that you pay attention to what the movie people do when they do posters. You need a visual that isn't just a still shot of a talking head. You need something that is motivating, and you need a copy line that motivates people to want to look at that video. Because a lot of times the videos don't get looked at because they don't look interesting. You need to sell them on the website.
Rob, I remember with my former company, we used a video company called Snippies.
Yes.
Are you familiar with them?
I am. They do many things, but they do. They were famous for kind of man in the street interviews. They've since branched out to a lot of other kinds of things, and so you could get consumer interviews done, and it could be impressive. That is not content I would choose to put on the website. That is content that I would hold and use as the excuse to get in front of a prospect. We've just done some research among teenagers, which is your target, and how they're changing their social media habits. And it's a short video, and it would only take a few minutes for me to share it with you. That is a lot better hook as a meeting excuse, and so I'd hold it for that. But they're a very excellent company.
That's a great takeaway. Thank you. Questions continue to come in. Won't competitors try to steal our employees if we show them on the website?
There are databases out there that are far more thorough than what you have on the website. You know, I mean, there's, you know, I have a list of 25,000 agency people that I communicate with. Okay, I know all of you. I don't need to go to the website. So you're shooting yourself in the foot when you don't put people up there. You don't have to put everybody up there, as I said. The important senior people are important because they're going to make the decision first on that level before they care about more junior people.
We segue into another question on videos. What about using a video of the agency president on the site?
Generally, I would recommend against it if the agency president is very telegenic, if the agency president is not talking to the camera like a moron, but instead is being interviewed by someone who you never really see, but being interviewed. And if the topic is interesting, and if you edit it so that it's very much little sound bites, okay, but you got to meet all those criteria to do it.
Next question, let's see. Can our agency use Facebook to help promote us?
Well, if you're talking about the agency, most agency Facebooks are an eclectic melange of your company picnic and recent work and just hired Gwendolyn and so on. So they're all over the place. They're not really demonstrative of how to use Facebook from a marketing standpoint. The way to use it from a marketing standpoint is to realize that people are not interested in brands, they're interested in benefits and meeting their needs. And so if you have a quick example, John Deere is like a whole lot of different kinds of products, from wheat thrashers to lawnmowers and so on. And they had, for a long time, they had one Facebook page, or maybe they still do, which is trying to appeal to all these targets. So you can't put that kind of content in there. You have to feed content in that is interesting to the prospect. So I had recommended they divide it up. So they have the latest farming techniques, sponsored by John Deere, best lawn care tips, sponsored by John Deere, and have multiple Facebooks, each marketing to the specific segment of their target audience. That's an example of how to use Facebook properly. And you'd have to find a way to do that within the context of your current clients to demonstrate that.
Questions continue to roll in. We're getting near the end. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Apologies to those individuals whose questions we have not gotten to. Just a heads up, Rob will be back with us on June 11th for a new webinar, 17 new business mistakes that agencies typically made. So the write-up will be posted within the next week or so on the Filament website. Let's get to the questions, more questions. What's wrong with showing every employee on the site to make them feel included?
Nothing. As long as you identify the leadership in some logical kind of way, as opposed to hiding them alphabetically by their middle name or something. As long as you feel perceptually that it makes the agency size acceptable. If you were like 10 people, then I wouldn't list everybody. I'd try and cheat the system and make yourself look bigger. But I mean, it's nothing innately wrong. Just that's what I would do.
Question, I think the answer will be, it depends. But the question is, what's the going rate for new website design?
Oh, it's so all over the place, anywhere from, 40 to 140. Depends on what you want to have there. Right. If you're putting a lot of video and things like that on it, then you got to build a bigger starship.
Yeah. I believe my former company spent well into six figures, but
oh yeah, no, the ability to go down the rabbit hole and get lost in the vortex is definitely there. But I've seen agencies do perfectly nice websites for much less.
I think we have time for one last question. Again, the questions continue to roll in. You've got Rob's email address up on the screen. Last question. What about having copy to drive SEO results?
Well, okay, you need to have plenty of copy on your website. How you choose to lay it out and you know, as opposed to having, you know, huge amounts of words on one page kind of thing that gets a little ridiculous. And of course, the algorithm keeps changing, so you need to stay ahead of the curve here and constantly be changing your words at the same time. You need, unless you are professionals in SEO, you need to consult with a professional SEO person to maximize search.
Rob, that was terrific. It is 2:01. We ran 1 minute past, which is fine as the questions continue to roll in. Again, Rob will be back with us June 11th. Our next webinar, March 27th, on how to defend creative work without sounding defensive, conducted by Mark Schnurman. It's a good one. And again, check the Filament website as we continue to post new webinars on the site. We thank everyone for tuning in. Rob, have some tea after this webinar. You sound like
that virus is coming for me.
Oh, God. We thank everyone for tuning in. We hope to see you on a future Filament website, webinar. And again, thank you and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.